We live in a world ruled by tyranny, where knowledge is suppressed and ignorance is glorified. A world where propaganda and misinformation travel the airways at the speed of lies. But in the midst of the violence and chaos, a great awakening is taking place. And as the media empires continue to collapse, a new network is forming. A network of truth, a network of courage, a network of awareness. Peace and greetings. You are now tuned into the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, where we examine current events, politics, health, finance, and topics of cultural relevance in America and throughout the world, while bringing you insightful interviews with guests that will both educate and inspire you. And now, your host of the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, Aura the Informationalist.
Please just tell me what's happening to me in plain English without the mumbo jumbo.
My aura is a network full of awareness and gifts like Aura, the informationalist.
How you doing? How you doing?
All right, peace and greetings, people. This is Aura the Informationalist, and we are broadcasting live on the Network of Awareness. And welcome, brothers and sisters. And we have a great show lined up for you today, broadcasting on all the social media platforms as well as on Spreaker Live. And of course, if you don't get to dial in or tune in to the live broadcast, you can always download the show on the back end. And we got a great guest. And I'm going to give you some information and a little bio about the guest that we have coming on today's show. And his name is Martin Theis. And Martin is a spiritual coach and teacher. And he focuses on mental and emotional well-being through the art of shamanic journeys. And the coaching practice that he has called Light Trails Co.'s mission, or company's mission, is to assist others on their journey from suffering to inner peace and joy. And of course, brothers and sisters, we need a lot of inner peace and joy these days. Martin lives in Germany, and shout outs to all the brothers and sisters in Germany and Norway and Hawaii, and is in the process of building a decentralized network of nonprofit organizations that aim at building low entrance barrier refuge for people to find healing and regeneration. And of course, we're going to have Martin's information in the description page for you to go to his website, which is lighttrails.co. And he also has a webinar series that's a free online workshop to explore emotional well-being through the art of shamanic journeys. So brothers and sisters, welcome to the Network of Awareness podcast radio show. And we are so grateful to the Most High for your support and are working diligently to provide our listeners with valuable information that can assist you in developing a greater sense of social, self, and spiritual awareness in our ever-changing societies and cultures. So, with that being said, let's bring Martin onto the show, shall we?
Hello, hello.
Yes. Welcome to the show, brother. How you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I first spoke to you, and you had told me that you do a lot of shaman work, and then you said you don't use any types of psychedelics and stuff like that, or any types of any things that the typical shaman work and the way it's conducted with people do. You don't actually do it in that way. And I thought, what an interesting guest to have come on the show that does something that's very unique, that's not really part of the norm to what especially Western civilization knows of when it comes to shaman work or shamanic teachings. So, if you want to let the listeners know, um, kind of like some of your beginnings, I always like to start from the beginning of my guests, and you could just give a brief um, description of how your life was from a child to growing up, and how your journey was early on in your beginnings. If you wanted to talk about that real quick.
Yeah. So I would say at some point when I was maybe late adolescence or in my early 20s, I would have said that I had a regular childhood, just everything fine, right? But I was still struggling. I had experienced suicide in our family from a really close family relative of mine when I was 16, and that kind of had its impression. But somehow, the more I dug into my past through those shamanic journeys, I realized that I had been kind of like or had experienced traumatic situations about emotional abuse, narcissistic behavioral patterns in my periphery, and so. Um, the as traumatic as that passing on of the relative was, I realized relatively quickly that the major imprints in my um yeah personality were really early on, these early imprints. And so when I was 23 or 24, I think I stumbled into a shamanic journey workshop, and that's the teacher I'm still with. And she's kind of like my supervisor, and we have monthly meetings in a group where we come to that shamanic journey workshop, and to just explain a little bit about it. It's like you said, without any substances, and it can be compared to a meditation where um, there's some kind of teaching before, because we're also somehow, we not somehow, but a little bit being trained in a way, right? We are giving the tools and all these things that my teacher passes on, but then when it comes to the shamanic journeys, we have an intention, and she prepared a journey. So she says, today we're going to this place or that place. Today we're visiting our totem animal, just as one example, right? And so we lay down, close our eyes, and there's a relaxation exercise. And then she begins to drum, or I begin to drum, depending on who is the facilitator, right? And then people just um, go to the body is still here, and we feel our body all the time. It's not like we lose touch of any sensations in the room. It's just like the focus changes a little bit, as if we were dreaming. Take this mixture between a dream state and the awake state. That would be the best description for me, where we still are tethered to our body. We're not completely, as in dreams, gone without any noticing our bodies, but also we are in that dreamscape like place where we do these shamanic journeys. And that would be my description on how I found this, right?
So what can you let the listeners know? What makes a journey shamanic?
I I think the word shamanic is relating to different aspects. And it is the teachings through nature, plants, animals, and the connection to the earth, that the earth is our home, and this is where we gain great insights. That is one part of it, I would say, in all those indigenous shamanic traditions, that there's a great reverie and respect for nature, and there's always these learning aspects where, if we imagine we go on a vision quest or a medicine walk, we have a question and then we go out into nature, and nature is mirroring us these questions, or is offering answers. And the other part of that shamanic journey is, as I mentioned before, that a part of us is traveling to a different kind of reality, where we are in touch with our subconscious, but also with our higher self, and depending where we go and what the intention of the journey is. But it is that traveling, that going to a different plane, if you will, and doing some kind of internal work, depending on the intention, as I mentioned before. That would be my description of how I see that as a shamanic journey.
And can you describe what that feeling like was for you for the first time when you went on your first journey and you went into a deep meditative state? Because a lot of people have different experiences, and if you could share what the feeling was like and the experience on your first journey where you made I guess I would say like a major a breakthrough.
I can describe it. I just don't feel that the first journey was the major breakthrough, just to put things into a right perspective. I think with this work, it is just the keeping on of it, that continuously letting go or peeling away these layers of false identities or false identifications and old coping mechanisms. So I would say there's not one shamanic journey that is the major transformation, but it is just continuously, steadily working in that way for me. And the first time for me was actually when I was on a internship in Sweden, and was doing it by myself, because my friend who had talked about this workshop, when I left, I didn't get access to the workshop. There were none before I went to Sweden. So I found a shamanic drumming tape online or somewhere, and did my first shamanic journey. So I was by myself in the middle of nowhere in Sweden. And that was actually really inspiring to get access to that part of myself, right? And it was a journey where I was cutting energy cords, and that's maybe interesting to you, as you mentioned that the audience is also interested in many things where we have codependencies and where we are interconnected in a more abusive way, right? Or where we
Right.
feel. And so cutting these energy cords is done, and it's kind of like a maintenance. It's not once I cut this energy cord with that person, it's gone forever. It's more like if I interact with that person on an intimate daily basis, then those cords will rebuild again. But that was my first journey, and since I did that at the time, it was really freeing to me, because I was continuously dreaming of an old girlfriend, of an ex-girlfriend, and she was continuously appearing in my dreams. And so that was something where I thought, wow, finally there's some rest, there's some peace here, even though it came back, right? But it was that,
Right.
okay. So that was my first experience.
Interesting. And you talked about coping mechanisms, and you talked about narcissism that you recognized, in your family, which I think we all have a lot of narcissism that we're exposed to as children. And narcissism is just a fancy word for wickedness, evil, malevolence. It's just things that are pretty bad on a low level of the spectrum as far as emotions. It's usually anytime people talk about narcissism, it's nothing good, right? Um when you talked about coping mechanisms, is, you know, a lot of my listeners, they have different belief systems. And but all of the belief systems that my listeners have, especially when it comes to awareness, they all believe in one source of power that guides us spiritually. Um and with you going on these shamanic journeys consistently as you have and still do to present day, I know that I've had some coping mechanisms that I was deeply engaged in for many, many years that I had to give up through my spiritual growth and coming to certain understandings. Can you just mention maybe one coping mechanism that you realized that you had at the time that you let go of and improved the quality of your life and this journey that you're on?
Absolutely. And I think it is still something that I experience from time to time, and it is the fleeing or going away or kind of leaving, right? I don't know the exact term for that, but there's a coping mechanism where you just exit the situation that you're in, and you're hoping to find peace somewhere else, in a different place, a different relationship, whatever that is, in an external different event. And so I was, as I mentioned before, traveling a lot. I was leaving those places where I was because I was just miserable and was hoping to find respite somewhere else. So that was, and still to some extent, it shifted. And that's the interesting part, that at some point I realized it's not the running away from, but going towards, that it is still a leaving a place, and I accepted that I'm just a wanderer, kind of like a rolling stone, right? And I really accepted this part of me, but it's not wanting to go away from, but going towards some place that attracts me, that I feel I want to be in. So Hawaii and Norway being those two places where I really enjoy being, and whenever it is time to go to either of these places, to really to do that and to stay, and then until it's time the call or whatever that is, that internal feeling of, okay, I've done what I was here to do, and then I move on to that place where I feel called to again. Maybe at some point I will stay in one place, but it's not been like this so far.
It's interesting. You chose Norway and Hawaii. Can you let the listeners know? Because I actually have listeners in Norway, Hawaii. Hawaii actually has been a new listener for the past month. It was one of the states within the US that I never had listening to my show
Mm.
until just last month. So it's very interesting. And speaking of that, can you give a description to the listeners about what it is that you appreciate about Norway and what you've experienced there, and also Hawaii as well?
I think there's not a real big rational description for that. It's just the way how I feel. And Norway, to me, and I think a commonality might be that it's just less populated there. You know, it is very much nature. You're in nature a lot. And in Norway, there is a population of maybe 5.5 million people, in a country that's really, really big, and has a lot of nature, as anyone knows. And so the language as well, I feel like in a past life, if there is something like that, and I dove into that just a little bit, um, that this might be a place where I lived before, right? Or something where I really resonate with, because even as a small child, I ate um, thin crust bread. I don't even know how you call that in English. It's kind of like knäckebröd. It's just thin, dry bread that crunches when you eat it. And I ate it with salt butter, which is kind of like a peasant food, but always loved that. And so there's this drawing where I feel well when I'm there. You know, I love the language, and Hawaii is pretty much similar, only it feels deeper. This is just like every time um, I am in Hawaii, I feel like I'm home. I love the ocean. I love the animals that are there. and the culture is really something that I dove into, and the people. It's just the aloha state is something that might sound superficial, but the positivity and the general niceness of the people towards each other is something that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I've never been to Hawaii or Norway, but heard really good things about it. I even know people who actually moved from the United States to gain citizenship in Norway from the United States and left the United States behind for many of the reasons that you just explained. And it's interesting how Hawaii and Puerto Rico are very similar because they're island type of environments.
Hmm.
And when I go to Puerto Rico, the level of peace, especially when being around certain areas where my family's from in the mountains and being around nature, it's probably one of the most peaceful places that I've ever been to, where I feel a high level of energy that resonates, and that my body kind of like, I feel like I'm vibrating when I'm over there, where I feel way more energetic, but not like energetic in the sense of just having a lot of energy. It's an energy that's more spiritual. I'm pretty sure you understand what I'm saying when, and the listeners, where it's hard to explain, but it's a greater sense of awareness of my place on this earth, and what it is that I'm experiencing, opposed to where when you grow up in some place like New York City, it's an overload on the senses because there's just so much going on. It's overcrowded. You got to constantly watch your back, and there's really no you really can't gain peace of mind, I don't think, in any metropolitan area because there's too much going on around you. So you can probably lock yourself in a room and meditate and, find some peace, but it's nothing like being around nature. Um, you when you talked about narcissism, and I said that I was going to discuss it briefly with you when we spoke about it. Um, what advice can you give people that have these codependent relationships? Because I know I've had plenty of my share, and and I'm going to mention something to you that just recently happened to me. I had a old friend that I cut ties with after 23 years reach out to me just yesterday. Very much a narcissist to this present day. And it's interesting how when you have these long-term relationships with your friends or people that you've known for a long time, and you know what you've done for them and with them, and you know it's it's interesting because you see your life as, when you live in the present, your past does matter, but then it doesn't. And what I mean by that is that some of these relationships, like the one that I'm talking about, once I left it behind me, I it was gone. Like I remember it vaguely, but I'm so into the present that that relationship, I don't really miss it. And then when this person came back to try to reach out to me, it I'm not gonna say that it disturbed me, but it did irritate me in the sense, in the way they approached me in this narcissistic manner that they came at me. It was very manipulative and a bunch of other things. But what I did realize was like, wow, I don't miss this person. A person that I spent a lot of time with, did a lot of studying with, did other things like make music, all these things that at the time I thought were pretty great, but the experience as a whole wasn't as great as I thought it was. And my question to you is like, when it comes to these our past lives and things we've done, is there anything you can suggest to help us to understand how to find peace with our past, so that even if it does wind up reemerging like what happened to me, because I've moved on to the point where this friend doesn't matter to me no more. I appreciate the experiences that I was able to have with this person, but this person doesn't define me as a human being. But they think they do. They think they
Hmm.
had this like this impression on me that molded me to the man I am today. And it's quite comical. I'm laughing because this guy was like my brother. We're the same age. We're in our mid 40s. And it's crazy how narcissists are very grandiose. Like they really believe that they're these special people that nobody else is like. And, it's and their egos, which stands for edging God out, their egos are so inflated that they live in a false reality that only exists within their mind. And I had conversation counsel with a couple of people yesterday about this. And my question to you, and it's just interesting how things just fall into place, is how do you find peace with these things that are from your past, which I have, but when they reemerge, how do you like keep a steady level of peace to not let it affect you? Can you answer that?
Mm.
Because I'm gonna be honest with you, when we first talked, you seem like a very peaceful man. Like like your whole demeanor and your spirit, you're just very calm. You give me the impression that there's not a lot of things that bother you. Like there's not a lot of things that even get you riled up because it seems like you just like so peaceful that nothing really disturbs that.
It's nice to know, but I can assure you that that is not the case. And I will do my best to just answer the question that you asked about people. I would probably split it up, because to me it's not a one-way answer that I could give, because if people, the listeners in the audience, experience um these kind of relationships and they're within their family, it is a different matter of dealing with that, because we are tied to some extent to that person, right? We cannot just
Right.
say goodbye. You're you're a person who gives me the feeling that I'm not good enough, or I feel manipulated, whatever that is, that I want to walk away from, or that I want to say, well, this is not for me anymore. So I feel like in a book about narcissistic behavior in relationships, especially between children and their parents, I think I read this once. It's important to let go of the thought that I can change my parent. I can make them as spiritually evolved as I am, or as mindful, as present as I am, to have that feeling or that thought that I can change that person, to let go of that and to say, well, this is the other person's responsibility, and they might not ever change, right? I just wanted to say that up front, because that was really helpful to me, because I felt to some extent I might be able to change my behavior, which is the regular pattern of someone in a toxic relationship, codependent relationship, where I see the fault of the person in me and that I have to do something in order to make it good, right? Or to create harmony in that relationship. So it was good for me to understand there's nothing I can do, only to find peace. If this is a parent or if this is a sibling, find peace, accept that person as they are, and then to look at what triggers me. Kind of like it is a really difficult step, because when we're really codependent and really close, I think my advice would be to seek some kind of distance, which was what I did. I don't have another except, or not another, a solution, because that was how I solved these situations. So I can't give the audience any advice that I hadn't done before, right? But for
Right.
me, finding some kind of distance, physical distance, helped me to at least feel a little safer, and to look at these boundaries that I had always had difficulties with, and have it, because I wasn't able to create boundaries between people who were narcissists in this way, right? That is one of the also the elements of this toxic relationship, that the narcissist is overreaching and that the victim, in quotations, is not able to create boundaries and is therefore exploited or lets themselves be exploited from another person. So I would say create some distance and find some inner peace in yourself. And then, as I mentioned before, at some point in our evolution, if it's a family member, then we get to look at, why is that person triggering me? What is it in them that is just making a reaction in me? And to work with that and to create boundaries and say, no, stop, or to go away again. There's not a perfect solution. I just wanted to say, it is at some point when we're on our spiritual path, that Ram Dass once said, if you think you're enlightened, go home to your parents, right? And so when we are observing these old patterns in ourselves, to be compassionate with ourselves and say, well, this is still affecting me, but I am healing. I'm becoming a more loving person, and to establish compassion, right, in these relationships. That is just my advice, because I feel as long as we harbor anger and resentment, we are still tied to that person. And so if I'm able to say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you, which is a Hawaiian version of a ceremony for forgiveness, then we are really letting go of that tie. And that is what we want. We want to be free. We don't want to kind of like go away and still have that person in our energetic periphery. And so, coming back to your first question, how do I work with the person, or what do I do if someone really comes back into my life? I would say, I look at myself. What is it in me that is attracting that being back into my sphere? Because you mentioned, I'm not blaming you, don't get me wrong. I'm just looking at, what is it that the person, why is they coming back, or why are they coming back, and what is it in me that I can work with in order to really cut that cord again, be forgiving, say, well, I'm grateful, as you mentioned before, for the time we had, but this time is over. I'm a different being now. I'm as you mentioned, just like softly sending them on their way again, and then
And I did that, and I kind of realized why this person, and what I mean by this person came back into my life. They sent me an email, and I tried to call him to speak with him, but he wouldn't pick up my call. He wanted to express his false narratives. I'm going to
yeah
say it politely, through an email, which I thought was insane, because we're in our 40s. It's like we're too old for this nonsense. But I I thought about it, and I said to myself, and I had a couple of conversations with people about this, is that right now my level of ascension and my level of growth spiritually is probably at one of its greatest points that it's ever been in my entire life. As far as the people I'm surrounding myself with, the work that I'm engaged in, the constant thoughts that I have, um, the way I view myself, and just overall the level of peace and the things that I'm able to accomplish with that peace for others. Like that saying says that when you seek happiness for yourself, it eludes you, but when you seek happiness for others, you find it in yourself. And I'm really living that right now, where I am seeking happiness for others and finding that true joy and happiness within myself. And I give all the praise and the glory to my creator, to my heavenly father, to the most high for that, because I think what happens is, and what this person did by coming back into my life, technically not really physically coming back into my life, because ever since I moved to Florida, I let go a lot of that, of those things that weren't good for me, and just so many levels. I mean, from people that I did drugs with, and all other types of stuff. And this person is one of those people that once I moved to Florida, I still had a relationship with them, but then it was quite evident that I had to let that relationship go because it was toxic for a long period of time. And I kept giving this person, like others, the benefit of the doubt. And I even did a show on it. And I'm making it into a series called No More Benefits for the Doubts because it's something that really has helped people when I did it. And you said it very well where it's like you have to physically distance yourself because that really does work. I've even done it with family members as well. And it's helped me to gain a better understanding of who I am without having that interference. So I just brought that up to you because it just happened yesterday and it made me realize, oh, I know why this is happening. Martin, it was happening because I'm growing and doing really great things for other people, and I'm really growing spiritually, that these sometimes these forces that want to interrupt that, or people that have certain forms of jealousy or envy towards you, they'll see that happening for you and they want to interrupt it because they're not realizing that potential within themselves. They're upset with themselves and where they're at. And you've heard that saying, misery loves company. So I think this person was just trying to throw a monkey wrench and trying to psychologically manipulate me to feel sorry for them by trying to make me feel sorry for something that they think I did to them, which was I knew was bogus, but I try to be as pleasant as possible in my response. And somebody had told me, somebody that I look to as a mentor that gives me counsel told me, why did you even respond in the first place? And when I thought about it, it was because of my ego, because I felt like I had to retaliate or and say something back. But there was that other part of my spirit that was like, there's no reason to even respond to this. You've moved on from this. And this is a prime example of why you moved on from this person. So thank you for mentioning that because you hit on a lot of key points. And I'm glad that I asked you that question because now you gave me even a better understanding that I made the right choice in separating myself and how I dealt with the situation. You mentioned Ron Das, right? So you mentioned Ron Das, and that's a name, brother, that I've been hearing a lot just in this past week. Okay,
Mhm.
to the point where it's like I got to check out this guy Ron Das because I didn't even know who he was. But that name was literally said 10 times this week so far to me. And now
Okay.
here you are saying it,
Yeah.
and you're the 10th time saying it. So my question to you, and it's a question that you have here, is do you have any role models that inspire you? And I'm assuming, okay, just assuming, I could be incorrect here, that Ron Das is one of those people.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, so
So,
who are those people that inspire you?
um, over the course of the last 10 years, I really found many great spiritual teachers, and Ram Dass is one of them. I think it's often too much to mention. It's probably 8 to 10 people because it's a circle. I kind of envision that circle where I'm sitting in, and all those teachers are gathered around the circle, right? And so I think what is important is how do we find these people? That's what the audience is probably interested in, right? If you don't have, assuming you don't have something that inspires you, right? If
Right.
you're on the lookout for someone who captivates you, and I think it is, as I've never been a podcast listener, you're that inspirational figure for the audience here right now. And also, I feel like just keep an open mind like you. If you hear a certain name or something, some content for many times within a short amount of time, for me, it was A Course in Miracles, which is a kind of like a Christian, a channeling from Jesus Christ. And it's really a course that has been so beneficial for me. But in the beginnings, I didn't know what it was. And Eckhart Tolle and Wayne Dyer and a couple of other people mentioned this book. And so I was really interested in that because I hold them in great respect, and I feel like if they mention a book like this, then I want to check it out, right? And so if we hear something like that, then to just stay curious and to check it out. When I personally listened to A Course in Miracles for the first time, I was really mildly disappointed because it was read kind of boring, so very monotone. Very monotone. And the whole book is probably that the first volume is 20, 30, 40 hours of content. So I was just, this is the whole book and it's going on like this. But at some point I really found the attraction. And what I wanted to say is that just keep an open mind to who is named, who is mentioned in dialogues like that. I think I was on Maui in 2018, and a friend I met just said, check out Ram Dass. If you haven't heard of him, he lives here on the island. He lived at that time on Maui. He passed away since, but and he's been really a great inspiration to me. I love listening to Ram Dass because he's such a great presence, or has been and still is in my life.
Yeah, I have to check out his work. Now, Wayne Dyer is someone that I definitely, he's since passed away as well. And so I just found out recently too that um the Canadian personal development guy, why can't I remember his name? I'm having a brain fart right now. Uh Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor was a man that I admire very much in the things that he taught about personal development. But yes, these people that you mentioned, especially Wayne Dyer, Edgar Tolle. Edgar Tolle is still alive, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So when it comes to Christ, I read the scriptures, and that gives me great understanding, gives me great wisdom and knowledge to apply in my life. And it's something that we talk a lot about. I have another podcast called The Council on Christ Relations. Um, so with these people that have inspired you and led you on this journey, and you've done a lot of this. I'm sorry about that. I thought I put my phone on vibrate. So these people that have inspired you and you've led you on this journey, there's a lot of people that are not like you and I. And then what I mean by that is that it's not that we're better than them. It's just they really haven't found anything that they love to do. They haven't found any meaningful inspiration in their life. They don't really have a sense of purpose. They're just like stuck in this rat race, especially people here in the United States. It's very easy to be stuck in this rat race of go to work, come home, get some entertainment, eat some food, do it all over again, right? And then this cycle of I'm looking forward to the weekend because I'm going to a party or a barbecue or a club, and I'm gonna go get drunk or high. And it's this repetitive cycle of the same thing over and over again. And a lot of these things that people get engaged in lead them down dark paths where it causes a lot of chaos, and then their lives become very self-destructive. So, with all that being said, for the person that is wanting to get out of that mode of that repetitive cycle that they feel somewhat imprisoned in, how can somebody find purpose and meaning if they don't know where to start or where to look? What can you say about that? Where can somebody start finding that, or how can they go about beginning that journey and going through a specific particular process in order to start that journey of finding what the title of the show is, finding the harmony within?
I would say the intention is probably the first thing. If I feel something isn't working, and I have the understanding that the mode of operation that you just described, where I'm just jumping from one weekend to the other, from one vacation in a year, like maybe two. Those are
Yeah.
those big ones, but the small ones are the weekends, and just going over and over. I feel like if we have the understanding something isn't working anymore, to have the intention, what is it that I'm looking for? Is it purpose? Like if purpose is what I'm looking for, this might be a longer road, because this is not found in a weekend retreat oftentimes, right? We go down many alleys and try out stuff that hasn't worked, in order to find out what is it that I'm actually looking for? What is it that elevates me? And in order to find out what elevates me, I often find stuff that drags me down or doesn't elevate me. It's just like neutral. So the intention of what it is that I would like to bring into my life is the first step. And then to hold that intention, And as we mentioned before, when I hold that intention, I want to improve my life in terms of, I want to be happy. I want to go to work and be uplifted. I want to do something that is worthwhile and beneficial to others. I want to serve my community, whatever that is. There will be opportunities to try out, and they might not all lead down that rosy path of happiness, but they will bring me closer step by step to me gaining an understanding of what it is that I'm actually looking for, right? That would be my quick roundup for how we can approach this. And I know this is not a hands-on approach, but then on the other hand, there are so many different ways how we can grow spiritually, that I don't really want to limit that through my perspective. My perspective is all about shamanic journeys, journeying in the external world, having a connection with nature, and being in that journeying mode, right? But there are other people who offer other things that might help other people that are listening right now in the audience better. So my general saying, just follow your intuition and hold that intention, is more valid to a broader audience. And if those of the audience who are interested in shamanic journeys and shamanism or whatever it is, they can always come to me. But that is, in my experience, always a small amount of people who feel drawn to that kind of work, right?
That's right. That is correct. But you never know. And I've done shows where I have guests come on, and the listeners are very much intrigued by what they do, and they want to learn more. And that's the whole point of doing this, is to bring an awareness to let people know what is available to them. Because a lot of times people just don't know what is out there, and they may be looking for something, and you might be that person that can offer it to them. So, and I think that especially these days, people are looking to grow more spiritually. They're looking to find more meaning. Now, this is a question that you put here, and I think it's a very powerful question. It says, "What if I can't feel anything, and and am afraid to investigate my emotional state?" And I think that that's a great question, because there's a lot of people that are afraid to go there. There's a lot of people that have become desensitized. And through my perceptions and what I've seen here in the United States, even in the where I live now in Florida, there's a lot of people like this where they're very much afraid. They're very much become desensitized to feeling joy and happiness, where they've become somewhat very pessimistic in the way they view their reality, where they feel like, especially with everything that's going on in the world, where there's a lot of famine now, there's scarcity across the board. They don't see any abundance in life. especially here in the United States, you got these derailments, you got the medical tyranny, and it's not just with the science appliance, which we don't use the V word here, but it's with a lot of things. It's with the economy, and so it's like when you start to see all these things, it seems like the world is going to crap. And to a certain degree, when it comes to our systems and our institutions and our infrastructure, it is purposefully. But there's a lot of great things happening right now, a lot of beautiful things. And sometimes we have to, what I do through my show is I show people and teach people like focus on the meaningful things, because if you give that which you don't like a lot of attention, then that's the reality you create. That's why when I talk about the news and all of these negative things, I expose it for what it is. I let people know what the lies are so that we can better understand the truth, and the primary truth being the truth within, so that people can find that harmony. So I'm going to ask the question again that you suggested on your profile, which is, what if I can't feel anything and I'm afraid to investigate my emotional state?
When you just spoke, I felt like maybe drawing a comparison, which might be a little faulty, but if we look at some of the reality TV shows where people are really heavily overweight, obese, kind of, where they have eaten so much that they can't move, they
Oh,
often
my
get
my 600-pound life.
something like that. And
Yeah.
so I feel like oftentimes, um, if we draw an analogy to that, if depending on the degree of my emotional desensitization that you spoke of, if I completely cut myself off from my emotions because I experienced heavy trauma somewhere and I just don't want to feel that anymore, I know that if I open up, I get hurt, people abuse me, whatever the narratives are, then we just shield ourselves from that. And I would say, depending on the degree of that, we need help, because we don't know how to find that place. How do I begin to feel my emotions? And I talk about my experience because for the longest time in my supervision, when my mentor was asking me, how do you feel right now, I didn't know. I just didn't know. And I needed someone who helped me kind of ask these questions that helped me find a way to that place and allow myself to feel that, because I was so afraid of feeling, right? And so I think, that being said, for those with a minor degree, it is simply breathing in the moment. It's kind of like a meditation, like a presence or mindfulness or awareness meditation, where I sit down and I just breathe and I feel my inner body, or just connect with my breath, and then I check out what's coming up, right? And for those who know stretching in the body, I would always say, when I was young, I was taught stretching to the point where you can't go any further, where it hurts so much that it's just like everything is just excruciating pain. And that's way too much if we think about emotions. Just touch that emotion and feel what you are able to feel. If I feel a little sadness and that's already almost overwhelming, then just step back a little bit, to just take as much in as it feels beneficial in this situation. And we're talking about this dam of emotions that we kept away, right? So this is kind of like a powder keg. But if we get in touch with that feeling that we feel right now by staying with the breath, and then to just allow what is to be, that would be my answer to that. And I know it sounds simple, it is difficult. And for those who say, but how do I feel what if I don't feel anything, right? And that's why I say that's when we need someone to help us, because if I don't know the road, if I don't know the way, I might just get lost, right? I just might go down a road of some negative spiraling into depression, whatever that is. I feel like if we are at a certain place in life where we held up our emotions for too long, then it's wise to take someone as a counsel and to ask for help in this. That's how I would approach that.
Okay, great. And I think this is another great question that you have where, and I can't wait for the answers. Like I've been waiting to ask this question because I thought it was pretty interesting. Um, if you could cook for one person, dead or alive, who would that person be?
I love this question, and it's a little bit like going to an ice cream parlor. I always order the same, even though all these interesting ice cream things are there. So, but I love thinking about it, and I would really love to meet Jim Carrey and cook for him. It's
Really?
yeah, absolutely.
Why so?
I loved comedy when I was a really small child. I wanted to be a comedian. That was the time when Eddie Murphy was big, and who else? Kind of like all these funny Home Alone movie. And the Home Alone is not really funny, but like, Coming to America, all these Eddie Murphy movies. And Jim Carrey has been a comedian that I loved. And then at some point, I saw other materials of him where he was speaking to college graduates, a really, really inspiring speech. And he did this Andy Kaufman movie where he made a movie about that movie. And so I think he's a great, great personality who is someone I would really love to have a conversation with. So I would love to cook for him and have that conversation, and be.
Have you ever done sketch comedy?
No,
Have you ever done any type of comedy like stand up at, like at a local, even in school or anything like that when you were growing up?
I think I was in a theater improv workshop once, which was a little bit of that, but
How was that experience for you?
it was very interesting to be in that moment and to come up with something, that improv, just like in the moment theater play. I mean, it can suck sometimes, it can get boring, but sometimes it's really great stuff that comes out of that. So I think it's, as everything in life, if we are meeting the present moment, sometimes it's whatever it is, it is whatever it is.
A lot of people feel like money is the answer to all their problems, especially people that are suffering emotionally, internally, mentally. And another question here is, if you used to win the lottery, right? And just before I even ask this question, what a lot of people don't know, and I find this to be a very interesting statistic here in the U.S. Um, there's a very high percentage, and I forgot. I think it's like 70 or 60%, or maybe even higher than that. But people that hit the actual lottery and win millions of dollars wind up dying within a 5-year period after they hit the lotto. And I thought that was a very interesting statistic that
Mm.
I came across.
Hmm.
My question to you is, and it's a question, another great question here is, if you won the lottery, what would be the next action right after hearing about it?
So I'm sitting here, I get an email because I know I'm participating in the lottery where I would get an email if I won. So just imagining that. My next action, I would probably drive to the vet and start the process of having my cat prepared for getting back to Hawaii. So because she it's really difficult to get pets to Hawaii. It's possible, but and because that process takes much more time than just going online and booking a flight, so that was probably what I would be doing right now.
Interesting. Interesting. My dog is here with us. He was snoring pretty loud. I was hoping that it wasn't coming out on the audio.
I didn't hear it.
Okay, yeah, because I have these blockers on here that they take out all the noise. But I and I want to share this experience with you right now because I thought about it, and the first thought that came to mind if I hit the lotto, number one, I would be screaming by
Mm-hmm.
myself,
Mm-hmm.
it almost in disbelief, just screaming like, "Is this really happening?" And
Yeah.
start like touching myself to make sure that I'm not dreaming,
Yeah.
maybe even pinching myself. But I thought about this. And based on my experiences, the first thing I would start thinking about is making sure that I don't tell anybody. And I would
Mm-hmm.
plan that out on
Mm-hmm.
how I would keep it so secret. Because one of the reasons why a lot of people die is because they let everybody know.
Yeah.
And once they let everybody know, everybody's trying to come at you in your life. People from the past, present, future, like these people just start coming into your life looking to suck and get all that money out of you. So really all the narcissists come out. And even the people that you thought weren't narcissistic start becoming narcissistic because now
Mm-hmm.
you have something that they want to get from you.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought about. I was like, that'd be the first thing. I would literally go into a whole strategy on how I was going to keep it secret and not tell anybody and stay that way, you
Yeah.
know, and just spend my money accordingly and separate myself from people. Maybe go to Hawaii or maybe get my own little island to live on, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's a smart thing to just keep it low key, right? And in the end, I would say my life wouldn't really change. And I think from what I heard from you, yours would probably not change in really major
Right.
ways, right? I would just be heading to Hawaii because there's this property that I really wanted to buy for the sanctuary, and that would mean I had the funds for that, right? So that was the thought, so that we can start building that
Right.
sanctuary. Yeah.
I had a similar experience not too long ago where it was like I'm not going to say it was like hitting the lottery, but to a certain degree it was. I came across a large sum of money that was sent to me in the mail from something way back. And I remember when I received it, I went into that mode like
Yeah.
I'm just keeping this to myself, and I did. I did share it with a few people, but these were people that I trusted. And it once it I said it to them, it stayed with them, and that's it. It didn't go nowhere. So I made the right decision in that. But let's go into I want to share your website here. Uh let's see here. Okay, here we go. Light trails. And if you could talk about your great work that you're doing, I know that like I let the listeners know in your bio that you have light trails, you have this nonprofit work that you're doing for local communities. And in if you could talk more about light trails and what the purpose is and your vision and what you're looking to do and all this charitable work you're doing, what you're looking to accomplish for others in this work that you do.
Yeah, so basically, some years ago I thought I would be starting a coffee importing business to Germany, Hawaiian coffees to Germany, and that didn't work out too well. And I'm saying that because the sanctuary that I intend to build needs some kind of income generator, because the way I see it, you spoke about it in the intro shortly, that it's low entrance barrier. What it means, it's for people who have average income or maybe even low income. It's not those one percenters who get to fly to perfect retreats. And I'm not saying this in a negative way. It's just like there is a retreat industry in the world where it's really only affordable for a couple of maybe 1,000 or 100,000 people if we look at it globally. And
Right.
so because the costs of such a retreat need to be generated, light trails is for me the income generator for that. So I feel I'm not, and I have to differentiate here because my coaching is something that's very unique and because it is so unique, and the way how I work and my personality is, if we look at the market rules, is something that can be very expensive, and there is a difference between, it's kind of like that Robin Hood effect, but I'm saying again, it's not that I'm looking at someone who has a lot of money negatively. It's just like they can afford my service as a coach, as a teacher, and what I do with that money. Some people buy mansions or cars or clothes or anything. For me, it's more important to use that money as best as I can to let it flow into that sanctuary, into that nonprofit work, right? And it's neither better nor worse. It's just something that I'm really interested in because it's my vision. And you have it here, the Aloha Aina Foundation. To me, just feels like there are so many, like, I don't know if you know that, but particularly the people who are from Hawaii or who know a little bit more about it, that so many residents and native indigenous kind of Hawaiian people have to move to the United States, to the mainland, because the rent is getting so high and the
Yeah.
housing crisis is really evident. So to work with nonprofit organizations on the housing problem, to kind of like find solutions for that. And I'm not saying that this 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 work will bring the solution, but to give some kind of attention to it, at least to find a solution and to protect the environment. There are so many things in Hawaii that, to the regular tourist who stays there in a hotel somewhere and is a little bit encapsulated in the holiday experience, doesn't really notice. So I feel there's so many things that we can devote money, but also human resources to, that this is something that I would really, really invest myself in.
Let's read this. The Aloha Ayana. That am I pronouncing Ayana or
Aina,
Aina?
Aina,
Aina.
yeah.
So, Aloha Aina Foundation. The basic concept is to create a refuge for anyone in need of it, a place where you can be safe and feel at home. You can be whomever you feel you need to be to heal. It is a place that separates us physically from our everyday lives. Geographically, distance is one factor that gives our thoughts at least the impression that the cause of the distress, which in most cases is related to a perpetual I'm sorry, a perpetrator or agent cannot reach us here. One of the many unique aspects of Hawaii is the many organisms discarded their defense mechanisms in the absence of physical enemies. Wow, that was a powerful statement right there. This quality of remoteness is an important ingredient. I know from experience that no single place on earth is far enough away to escape one's nightmares. However, distance is a pacifier that helps calm the part of the soul that needs healing. Oh, so true. Oh, so true. And that's why getaways are very important, because sometimes a different environment, and I truly believe this. Like I'm taking a trip next week for 12 days. And it's not even that far from where I live,
Hmm.
but it's in another state. And I'm going to be around some really good people. And it's kind of like a spiritual retreat, because what I'm going to do is celebrate the Passover.
Yeah.
And it's a very holy experience. It's a very spiritual thing that I'm about to engage in with my fellow brothers and sisters that give their praise to Most High in Christ. And it's something that I'm looking forward to, because sometimes we are in one place so long that sometimes just being somewhere different can give us a whole new sense of awareness about what it is that we're doing with our lives and where we need to be going and what we need to be doing from there on. So I'm very much looking forward to it, and I completely agree with this. So people that are listening, um, definitely go to go to Martin's website, look into it. If you're looking this, if you're a person that's looking for some type of mentorship, or you want to go to a place like Hawaii and get away and find some inner peace, get more in tune with your emotions, get more in tune with your inner self, your the spiritual being having the physical experience, but then also have that physical experience to get to know the spiritual being, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes we got to leave the places that we're connected to, because like that saying goes, and I'm not going to curse for this episode, but it's the same poop, different toilet, you know? So sometimes we need a whole different environment that we can go to and find some refuge and some peace of mind. So, like I mentioned, brothers and sisters, light trails, and the website is on there. Now, Martin, you had posed a question here, and I want to ask you this question because I think it's very important. Uh, if if we had that magic wand, if we had that one wish that could be granted by the, by whatever source energy or the higher power, if there was something that we knew we can do that can be done for us, right? And we were able to ask that question and ask for that one wish that would give us that inner peace that we want and desire so much and that we're searching for. Which one would you choose? What would be that one thing for you?
So just to maybe clarify shortly for the audience, what I meant with this question is in a speech, Wayne Dyer talks about we could either have want A or want B. And want A gives us everything that we want materially, kind of like we can like if we have that want, we can continuously create all those material things that we want, relationships, whatever. Or we could have want B, which would give us inner peace. And so I wrote this question down because for many years I just didn't grasp what want B would do for me. I was just like, I just want all my stuff. That's the best thing. I'll get want A for sure, right? And then having had let's say the last 2 years where I lived in Norway, in Hawaii, in Germany, and had enough money so that money didn't matter. I was still not always happy. I was still sometimes miserable, right? So I feel that is when we realize money, and that is what you mentioned before, money can't buy us happiness. And the want A is just a representation for limitless money, right? Because with that, we could buy everything we want. And so inner peace, if we are not happy with those things that we conjure up, and we feel still all these negative emotions inside of us that aren't true, that are just a remnant of the past, then we are not really able to appreciate those things. We aren't even able to appreciate what we have right now, right here, right? Oftentimes where it's not enough. I need more. I need to be wealthy in order to be ... So want B is something that might not look as attractive, but I think many people who have gained a lot of wealth and maybe celebrity status and everything, they probably know more why want B is so important, because they have it all from a perspective of our like us, everyone who is not in that celebrity realm, but there's still a lot of suicides in celebrity ranks, right? So this speaks about how they are not happy with that wealth, with that material gain.
Okay. Let me ask you another question because we're gonna wrap up this interview pretty soon. And before I ask my final question to you, which is really just you giving your final thoughts on this broadcast, have have you ever had an out of body experience?
Hmm. So, um, not consciously in the way where I was sitting down planning to have an out of body experience,
Yeah.
but yeah, if
And
yeah.
the reason why I asked before you answer that, I went into a deep meditative state when I was 18 years old while in a shower. And I sat down and I was practicing meditation at the time, and I just really went deep into a meditative state. I cleared my mind completely. And what wound up happening is after like, and I can't say this for sure, but I'm thinking it was probably 10 minutes into the meditation and there was water hitting my body while I'm meditating. I actually saw myself in the shower. So it was like my spirit, the higher self was up here, way up by the ceiling, and I actually saw myself. And I remember that just seeing myself and understanding that I knew I was outside my body, it kind of shocked me. And that tether snapped me right back into my body and I started vomiting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the reason why I asked you that question because I've had several out of body experiences. I got better with it, but that was the first time that I didn't plan on it. I didn't plan to go into a meditative state so I could
Yeah.
see myself, but it happened. So, uh, not I didn't want to interrupt you, but I wanted to give some context to why I asked that question.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember that when I was studying in Sweden in 2010, I was doing or listening to a book about out of body experiences. And I remember that at one stage, I really felt like um, leaving the body, but then that surprise moment, or maybe fear, whatever that was that you described in your experience, what that drawing back, not that that surprise. I would say I was really surprised and afraid probably at that time, just drew me back without ever having been outside of my body, but just when that lifting started. And other than that, only my dreams and shamanic journeys, but it's never like I'm seeing my body lying on the floor, right? Or dreaming I'm laying there and I'm walking lucidly around in the apartment or something.
Okay. All right. So, we're gonna close on this because we're reaching the hour and a half mark, and I told you we would. I'm pretty sure I could talk to you more about. There's a lot of questions that I would like to ask, but I'm gonna save that for another show, another episode that I'll have you come back and we'll go really deep into uh especially a lot of the things that Wayne Dyer taught. Now that I know that you like Wayne Dyer, because that's where I first heard that ancient script that he described about when you seek happiness for yourself, it eludes you. When you seek happiness for others, you find it in yourself. And I think that that's when he came to his on his when he started his journey. That's what he did. It's that he was seeking happiness for others, and he became this guru, but he didn't look at himself as a guru. And one of the things that I have so much respect about Wayne Dyer is that he was one of the people that was invited to be on The Secret. And he said, I don't
Yes,
want to be on there. I don't want to
yes.
be on there. And I love the answer that he gave. And I'm just paraphrasing, but he said that what he was focusing on is not the true purpose of what we're seeking to find inner peace and what it is that we should be searching for on this quest for understanding and for wisdom of what this spiritual experience is. And I thought that was great because The Secret, if you get The Secret, that book is in all of the witchcraft sections of bookstores. All right, it's in the witchcraft section. There's a reason for that, and he knew that because he's like, why, you got people focusing on a new car, and if I think about money, I'm gonna get a check in the mail, and that's no different than what these Christian pastors do. you know it's like, oh, I prayed to the Lord and I got a check for $3,000 in the mail. It's all nonsense. It's all witchcraft. It's not true spiritual knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that comes from our great creator. But love Wayne Dyer. Love him. But with that being said, any final thoughts or any final comments that you would like to leave the audience with on this particular episode called The Harmony Within?
Absolutely. Just when you just spoke, I felt like if the listeners are somehow on a similar path to the one that I am and that you described, and I feel like you went through similar things as well. So my assumption can be made that maybe we have a little bit in common. I would just invite yourself to have compassion for yourselves. Don't be so hard on you. Like, really see how destructive those negative thoughts pointed to ourselves are, that like, I'm not good enough, or I need to be better, I failed at this, I failed at that, whatever the narratives are. When you realize you're speaking to yourself negatively, then just be compassionate and say, well, I'm doing the best I can, I'm like on this journey, I'm on this ascension path, or I'm getting lighter, I will bring this light into this world, and I still have something to deal with, and to be compassionate with yourselves, because I have been always very hard on myself. So just an invitation to be more loving towards ourselves.
Well said. And it seems to be the reoccurring theme here on the network of awareness, to where having self-awareness is having compassion for oneself. So you heard it here again from Martin Theis, is that have compassion for yourself, brothers and sisters, because there's nobody else that's going to have that level of compassion for yourself than you. And great interview. You've been a great guest, Martin. Very much looking forward to you having you come back if you would like to.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think that you brought some great points here. And for the people that are listening, the way he ended the broadcast about having compassion, it's becoming a reoccurring theme here, to where it really is it's kind of like, it's really like the one of those main ingredients to have on your spiritual journey, and to keep on that journey, is to not beat yourself up. I think a lot of people, and I've done this, where we're so hard on ourselves that we start looking at ourselves with this sense of shame, to where we feel like we're nothing, like we're not important, like our life doesn't matter. But if you can look at yourself in the mirror and have compassion for the experience of everything that you are, and understand that it's wonderful, it's wholesome, it's beautiful, and not look at yourself as this ugly being, you will grow spiritually. You just will. Compassion is key. So thank you for mentioning that. And with that being said, brothers and sisters, we're gonna close out here. So, like I always say, brothers and sisters, um, when you live in the present, there's always an opportunity for a new beginning. And don't look for the light at the end of the tunnel, because the light is and always will be within you. So, light up the tunnel with that light that's in you and find your way through the darkness. This is Or the Informationalist with my guest, Martin Theis. Check out his website, Light Trails, that's in the description box. And Peace, love, and light, brothers and sisters, and giving all praises to the Most High. Shalom.